Hi, thank you very much for the panel. It was very, very interesting for me to hear. My name's Nadia Dar. I'm from the Bank Information Center based in Washington, and my work focuses on Yemen. Elobaid, I wanted to ask you if you might tell us, are there any restrictions on the mandate of the transitional government right now? Because, you know, we've discussed there's a lot to do. Grant was talking about all of the electoral reforms that need to happen. You discussed all of these constitutional issues. Are there restrictions on the mandate of this government? And then second of all, given that there's a lot to do, and that, you know, one would think that broad participation of Yemeni citizens in making all of these decisions is very important. Are there other steps that we need to do first in terms of opening up participation, such as establishing a freedom of information law, ensuring that there will be strong consultative processes in these developments of the constitutions? And so is that something we can expect first? Thank you.
Why don't we go ahead and answer that question? If you have a question, please approach the microphone. We'll start. Elobaid and Grant, if you have something.
Thank you, Nadia. I mean, there are general restrictions, but they're not different from any other context. That the government is expected to act within the current international frame of obligations that Yemen has, one. Two, that to affect a democratic transition. But the third and most crucial is actually elaborate a constitution. I think, if I understand correctly, there is only 2 years. That's a period of time during which two outputs have to be managed by this government. One would be the drafting of a constitution and also a consultation and validation, public validation of that constitutional draft. And I guess the second one is carrying out the next important elections. Those will install the permanent government. And of course, the third one is managing the daily affairs of the state. Because I think we tend to talk a lot about the legal and rights issues, but the economy and managing of the economy, and especially the issues of jobs, which led to the original spark, are probably one of the most primary tasks of this current government. So I don't see any other restrictions other than the fact that actually the ones I outlined. But again, I'm just trying here to imagine those. But Ibrahim might have something in terms of whether the GCC initiative restricts the scope of the mandate of the current government. I don't know, but I mean, the ones that I know on transitional justice, conceptually I don't agree with, because they have no legal validity in terms of actually being offered at this point. Second issue, in terms of what steps need to be taken, I think you hit the nail on the head. Whatever that's being done, the process of consultation has to be institutionalized and very quickly. And that's one of the ways of making sure that the youth are actually meaningfully included in the management of this transitional period. If we agree that their political participation in the formal sense is not possible at this point, i.e. they cannot be part of the current government, they refuse, and also I don't think they've been offered any sensible entry points in the current government. I think the consultation is another way of ensuring a wider participation. In terms of freedom of expression or opinion, I think there is a dire need for access to information, which is something that is in the entire Arab world does not necessarily know. What we know in the Arab world is the opposite of that. Monopoly for information. Information is power, therefore my control of the information. Even the talk today I'm giving, it's almost like copyrighted by me and nobody can say that. I'm the first one to say it, blah, 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 blah. And in that sense, so having a formal way of accessing information, forcing the current government to have a spokesperson that comes out regularly, tells the public what they're doing and how they're doing it, how they're managing the public affairs, is something that needs to be done. And you know, access to information is one of the key ingredients of the freedom of expression and opinion. Have an opinion, have access to information, and have the ability to disseminate the information on those opinions. So the government has to institutionalize a new way of doing things. One of them is actually coming forth with the information in that sense as a public entitlement, not as something that they're doing to kind of grace the public and they're doing a favor to everybody. No, it's a hard duty that they have to do and they have to carry out, and will have a lot of positive effects in that sense.
My name is Munir Mouari. I am a member of the National Council of Yemen. I'm not going to ask Ibrahim because Skype is not that great.
Okay.
My question for Grant is, why do you call this process in Yemen an election if you have only one candidate? And why the international community participate in a game or process like this? I mean, I don't see any purpose of electing one candidate. For Ahmed, my question is about the immunity. I think the envoy of the United Nations participated and he was a witness and given immunity for this. And your stand is clear that the international community doesn't support these kind of immunity. So what can the international community do for transitional justice outside Yemen? Thanks.
Thank you for those questions. I'll ask the presenters to address those. I knew someone was going to ask the question about this election, but Grant, we look forward to your answer.
Sure. Well, I think in terms of, as I mentioned in my remarks, this wasn't a competitive election as we traditionally know elections. But I think the real answer to this is, why did over 55% of Yemen eligible Yemeni citizens come out and participate in the process? And I think a lot of the discussion that was taking place during that point in time started with the discussion about, why should we get involved? This isn't competitive, but ended up in, I would say, the week or 10 days prior to Election Day, that it was really about signaling for the first time, giving citizens the opportunity to say, do you agree with this process, and should this process go forward? And I think that's what we saw when people came out and demonstrated through the ballot box that they chose to move forward and not look to the past. So I think it was an expression of people's will. And in that sense, it was an election.
Thank you. First, let me ask, are you Munir al-Mauri? You're the journalist who was demonized during the Aden port issue. That's you. Well, it's great to meet you because I was a human rights advisor then. You created a lot of work for me at that time. So it's great to meet you in person. I think it's good to be in the presence of some human rights defenders in the proper sense. In terms of the immunity, I think what happened is that many people thought Jamal bin Umar actually was blessing the content of the agreement. He was facilitating the discussion, but there was no official UN commitment in terms of the content of the agreement. The only official UN statement came out from my boss, the High Commissioner, Navi Pillai. And if you go back to our website, ohchr.org, you will see that she stated very clearly, she said that the framework for managing all of these issues is International Human Rights Standards Framework. And therefore, any political compromise, any process for managing political transition, our understanding is that is done in accordance with those standards, not in contravention with those standards. So in the view of the Office of the High Commissioner, it's not appropriate to offer immunity for past massive human rights violations without a proper process for accountability, being it any choice of transitional justice that people see, or an independent court, or whatever it is, but it is something that is, because we do believe in the culture of impunity or ending that culture of impunity, and therefore it's not necessarily appropriate from that particular point of view. So for me, that is the only official statement that you can find. But the engagement of the special envoy is to facilitate a myriad of issues that could, and quite possibly in this particular case, contravene some of our own operational principles. But we are not the ones who make the final decisions. It's the Yemeni partners themselves that they do, and also we are part of an international scheme that very often we do not necessarily have control over it. But as a lawyer, I can tell you that the only official statement in terms of that particular direction came from the Office of the High Commissioner, which is a designated agency that is handling most of the human rights issues for the UN system, system-wide in that sense.
Great, thank you very much. Invite the next question.
Thank you. My name is Maria Saleh, and I'm an intern at the United Nations Development Program here in DC. My question is, what legal steps should be taken to ensure a better representation of women in the political decision-making processes in Yemen in the next 2 years? Thank you.
A very good question. I'm not sure if we invite Ibrahim to attempt a response from your end, or I turn to another speaker. Sorry.
What is the question, Michael?
Oh, sorry. The legal steps that need to be taken to ensure greater inclusion of women in the transition process in the near future.
With the legal process act, there are many steps that first need to be addressed in the transitional process, which is one of the very first thing is the drafting after establishing the National Dialogue Committee, which is part of the GCC initiative, and after they agree on all the aspects of the issues here in dispute. We need to be talking about the next step, which is drafting the constitution. And that is where the issues of women's rights and other aspects as well can be addressed. But it's important before we get to the drafting the constitution and ensuring the good representation of women and others as well, is that we see a presence of women in the national dialogue process, because that is where the women in Yemen can address their rights and can really argue for what needs to be included in the process as well. So I see it as emphasizing the importance of the National Dialogue Committee and women representation there as well, and then move into the drafting the constitution and where that should be addressed there.
Thank you, Ibrahim, for that response. I'd like to invite the next question, and also just mentioned Elobaid has agreed graciously to interpret if someone would like to pose a question in Arabic. So, sir.
Thank you. My name is Fabrice Moussoni, and I am a policy analyst at United to End Genocide. And my question is regards the fact that Saleh has returned in Yemen, and there were previous media reports that suggested that he would be seeking asylum in Oman or in Ethiopia. And I was very curious to know how his presence back in Yemen going to affect the transitional period, mainly given the fact that he has still, or at least through his relatives, who control the army. And this is something that some issues that have been raised by demonstrators who feel like the army should be reformed. So I'm curious to know if what you think about his presence in Yemen, and if how it's going how it is going to affect the transitional period. Thank you.
Yes. It's an open question. Certainly that's on the minds of many people, is what the return of the president will mean in terms of progress and meeting the obligations of the agreement, not only the president himself, but family members. I put it out to the panel.
Well, I mean, I think we're just going to have to watch and see how this plays out. I mean, I think, there's been demonstrations recently in the last few days in terms, talking about a restructuring of the military. So I think we're just going to have to see how the government. I don't think the government is, insensitive to these issues. But I think we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out.
I think the gentleman wanted a translation of the questions and the answers.
Ah, my
So
Only the question.
We can do it very quickly. السؤال اللي فات هو ما هو تأثير وجود صالح في الدول المجاورة أو على الأقل إعطائه الحق اللجوء السياسي. الإجابة هي تعتمد. هل كل الأمور الآن في حالة تطور ومش حتى معروف هو إيش رأي النظام الحالي الموجود مثلا. تمام. Okay.
Okay, so that was the question.
I gave also a brief of the answer. So the gentleman is asking for translation of the question. So if you don't mind, you see me speaking in Arabic. It's basically to cater for some limited responses.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll have two more. Laura, you have something?
Yes,
my
I've got a question
colleague Laura
from a
also
member of the audience. His name is Ahmed, and he works for the World Bank. He's a Yemeni citizen. He wants to know, considering Yemen's dire economic situation, shouldn't economic reforms be a priority during the transition?
It's something we haven't addressed today, but I think it's something we probably our panelists would agree upon is the importance of building the economy and addressing those economic needs. Comments from Ibrahim, Grant?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Can I start?
Yes, please do.
Great, thank you. This is extremely important question, and I thank you for asking this question because it is closely linked to the success of the transitional process in Yemen, really. Because the unemployment in Yemen, we have to keep in mind, is over 35%. And people would like to see that there are certain outcomes for this uprising that they launched over the past time. And one of the major indicators of the success of the new president is to be able to deliver. So delivery, unless we see is achieved on the economic level, then things will be questioned about whether we have really introduced regime change or just the change of the president, and then we go back to protesting in the streets. Here, there is an important aspect of this economic question is to keep in mind is that people would like to see fast results. They are rightfully wanting to see some outcomes and that things are really changing on the ground. And of course, we know that this thing takes a long time. Here, it's important for the trust of the transitional process and for the GCC initiative is to ensure that the consensus of the international community and the GCC countries is to be able to provide economic assistance that the Yemen needs and as soon as possible. And here I would like to distinguish between two things. One is to ensure to deliver some economic results, some economic outcomes to assure the people. But second, which is even more important, is I would like to see the international community, the Gulf Cooperation Council and the United States in particular, depart from the traditional paradigm of economic delivery or financial aid. Is that here is we call for a conference and we get some donations, $1 to $2 billion, give to Yemen, and Yemen will sort out the problem. That is not the kind of economic paradigm or development paradigm that should be addressed, should be provided in the transitional period in the coming months. I think it's extremely important to have some genuine partnership between Yemen and the surrounding countries, the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, to ensure that Yemen is integrated within the larger region, and that is how the economic and development problem can be addressed and can be lasting and genuine in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Elobaid has something to add.
Yeah, I think some of the discussion that I've seen in terms of the quick improvement of the economic context relate a lot to the grievances, the present grievances. One, availability of jobs very quickly for people to be employed. Two, restoration of basic services, water and electricity especially are the key. Three, and crucially, equitable distribution of wealth, which was never the case in Yemen. And fourth, Nadia, going back to your access to information, accountability for state revenues, especially revenues from oil and natural gas. public access to those, or at least public display of the figures and the revenues. Those are key economic elements for management of the transition. I think that's what I have observed from the current debate.
Yes, sir. The final question.
Yes, best question. My name is Timothy Shorter, and I actually have a two-part question. The first part is, how would you characterize both the 9 judges on the Supreme Commission as well as the judiciary as a whole? How well equipped are they, do you believe, to handle the transition as it continues and to come up with to deal with it both financially, with their impact and their reach across Yemen, as well as their autonomy? And then second part.
Your affiliation, Timothy?
I don't have affiliation right
Okay.
now. And the second part is, how would you characterize the civil society in terms of their ability to support the judiciary as the transition goes on?
Okay. Elobaid, from the justice perspective,
Yeah.
judiciary and the
All I can say in a very eloquent way, yikes. I think that's one of the $1 million questions, and I'm glad you left it to the very end. I think this is, there is an awful lot of extensive debate in Yemen about the judicial reform and also about women involvement in politics. There's a lot of discussion that's rich, and a lot of people will actually have a lot of negative things to say about the judiciary, and the past regime has done an awful lot to make sure that the judiciary is, by all practical means, part and extension of the executive arm, or at least of the repressive arms of the state. However, I think, if there is a will, there is an awful lot of signs even before the transition where some judges have a bit of margin of independence. They were actually able to exercise a meaningful judicial mandate. So in that sense, with more space, I think that will be possible. However, are they equipped to manage some of the complicated issues now? I'm not sure. I think there are issues of transition that has to be, first, a subject of a national dialogue, and second, there have to be a clear discussion on which institutional settings will handle this. Transitional justice is one element, the formal justice is another one. I don't think this is the right time to engage the judiciary per se without resolving some of those main issues. Thank you.
I've taken my last question, but sir, if you have a short question, you could ask one more.
Yes, it is very short. My name is Sariq Kayed. I'm from the member of the Yemeni American Association. And my question is for Mr. Elobaid. You have mentioned the role of religion in Yemen. And I want to ask you, how far do you think the Sharia law will be integrated into the constitution?
Thank you. The final question.
All right. I think again, this is a burning issue. There's 2 levels that we can talk about. The basic level would be how do we interpret? There is a classic constitutional provision in Yemen. Sharia is the source of legislation, and it hovers between is the sole source of legislation or part of the sources of legislation. And classically, what happened in Yemen is actually you have legal provisions, and then you have judges, depending on their background, they will interpret which Sharia provisions that will apply. So at that basic level, I think any meaningful legal and judicial reform will have to clearly outline the relationship between formal legislation and Sharia principles. I think that's what's the missing link. But what I was talking about is at a higher level. Selective kind of use of some Sharia principles would be problematic for this period. First, the whole issue of declaring somebody a heretic by formal and non-formal entities is quite a crucial issue in Yemen. And I'm sure you follow the recent events where there's an informal entity that's called Yemen Ulama Association, or something that declared Bushra al-Makhtari and some writers to be heretics because they wrote something that considered to be contradictory. So in that sense, this is what I meant in terms of, for this particular point now, the political use of Sharia will be problematic for the transitional period. Any constitutional debate will have to actually clearly outline what will be the nature of that relationship between Sharia and management of the political transition now. And my suggestion is one issue could be helpful is that regardless of your political orientation and affiliation, there should not be any possibility for somebody to be criminalized for their opinion. Whether that opinion transcends or transgresses religious tenets or not, I don't think it's appropriate for this point, because the margin for abuse is a lot greater than any margin for coherently integrating religion in the management of this transition. And that's the only way I think I would see it as an appropriate way of managing the involvement of Sharia in management of the political transition in that sense.
But thank you for that question. I'm glad we allowed that last one. I want to thank you all for your attendance, your participation. Thank you for coming to IFES. I would like to mention we do have a briefing paper, Next Steps in Yemen's Transition, which covers much of some of the issues that were dealt with today. As was clear from today's discussion, this is a transition that is fraught with high expectations and with tremendous challenges ahead, both from the procedural, the legal, constitutional issues, social issues that need to be addressed. I invite you not only to follow our work in Yemen on ifes.org on the web, but also the other work we're doing with 5 other country programs across the Middle East region. We're pleased to have you at IFES and hope to see you here again soon. Thank you very much.